One of the really big challenges for the development sector is convincing people that progress is not only possible but is happening. The public perception is that things are getting worse in general, and our data backs that up. The most surprising result that came from the Aid Attitudes Tracker was the huge fall in the number of people saying that they donated to an international development charity over the 5 years. It went from 36% in 2013 down to 19% in 2019. And this is a result that has actually captured a lot of the non-governmental organisations and charities' attention. The Aid Attitudes Tracker was a large piece of research that happened from 2013 to 2018, where we tracked people's attitudes towards various issues to do with overseas aid, global development, in large surveys and some experiments as well. Respondents came from the UK, US, France and Germany. Over the period that we were doing this study, there have been a number of events that have happened that have changed people's attitudes, both more positively and more negatively. So, for example, the migration crisis in the Mediterranean, and also when there was the large movement of people into Germany, both of those events saw people become much more engaged and concerned about issues of global development. But what happens is that very quickly that engagement and that increased support reverts back to kind of the same position that it started at. So it probably lasts for a few months. And we saw the same thing in reverse when there was the crisis in Haiti in 2018 that affected Oxfam and other organisations, where people's support for aid and development issues dropped, but then bounced back quite quickly back to the same place where they started. So what we see is events do matter, but they don't last for a very long time. People have quite strongly held underlying values which guide whether they want to support or engage with questions of global development. We did a piece of work around where people get information about global development issues, and the number one source was the news. The most often covered development issues on the news are migration, are disasters and conflicts. And so it's not a surprise really that people are getting a very negative image. We decided to set up an experiment to test these debates about negative imagery and the harm that it does versus its potential to raise money. And what we did is we gave respondents some money at the beginning of a survey. We showed them an image, either a very negative, stereotypical image of a dying child, and asked them to donate money, or we showed them quite a positive image, and the language around it was much more based on kind of thoughts of solidarity and kind of shared experience. What we found is that there was no difference in the amount of money that the two different appeals raised in our experiment, but where we did find differences is that the negative image depressed people's sense of hope, and it also depressed people's sense that they could make a difference to the world. The consequence of the negative images is actually undermining the more general movement to try and get people engaged in a meaningful way with global issues. We find that corruption is the biggest concern people have around supporting efforts to address global development issues. For some people, it's a very real concern, and for other people, it's often a way of disguising their other reasons why they don't particularly want to support giving money overseas. On whether it's possible to make people feel like corruption is something that can be addressed and is not something that's unavoidable or permanent, etc. And our results showed that actually you can tell people about efforts to reduce corruption and bring them back on side. The new phase of the project is called the Development Engagement Lab, and that reflects the fact that we are keen to do much more experimental research and deep dives around particular issues to find out whether we can move people's attitudes and their sense of whether progress is possible, whether you can increase people's trust in development organisations, whether you can emotionally connect or make global issues more relevant to people's everyday lives. And that's what we're going to be doing for the next 5 years.